Okay, Dr. Bellows, take it away.
All right. Now, let me just add to what, Frans, to what you just said, relative to the realization of working in a large organization. And a couple of things that are fundamental is one is you want to develop colleagues that understand where you're coming from, that you could become essential to trying to do something in that environment, because you can't do it all yourself. You could be in a meeting where you're suggesting things that are outside the bounds of how the organization thinks, and when someone challenges you, it'd be really nice in that meeting to have a colleague help explain what you're trying to say, the others may not be able to hear. And so that part of the role of what we're trying to do in this course is give you the capacity through examples such as the table washing or the trip report, that you can share some of these fundamental concepts with coworkers, and maybe you practice at home with a spouse or a brother or sister, whatever, but practice with some people maybe away from work, and then develop your confidence in being able to explain it at work. Because in the long run, you can't do this all yourself. You're going to want to have a cadre of people. And that's why when I worked at Rocketdyne, we called it an in-thinking network. And every day we're trying to expand that network to people at all levels of the organization. All right. So let's just, so there's a cover slide. The focus today is systems thinking. And the aim is to continue to reveal to the attendees the many attributes, as you're becoming aware, of Dr. Deming's philosophy, which you currently exhibit, and those which are hidden, with a focus on leading and applying. All right, so the 3-hour session will be an opening from Frans, and then I'll do roughly an hour or so what we're referring to as an exploration lecture. And that'll be followed by a collaboration session where we'll divide you into groups. And then we'll come back. And that collaboration session also includes time to grab coffee, use the restroom, check your email if you want, briefly, and then come back for what we call the insights lecture, and then a close. Okay. So I start off with a review of our October 5th gathering, and then get into new content, specifically in the areas of the red bead experiment, which is probably one of the most famous things that Dr. Deming was known for in his 4-day seminars. And I know when I worked for the Deming Institute, the two websites that got the most visits were the 14 Points website and the Red Beads website. So look at that. Then what Dr. Deming referred to as first steps, then customer expectations, and then last, what I refer to as the paradigms of variation. Okay. So these are photos my wife took of the struggling during the red square exercise, you may recall. Okay. And this is the first week of the simulation, the baby steps, beginning to move the tables together. And then you notice the tables become closer, the room becomes quieter. Okay. And then reminder, the people you'll continue to hear about, Junichi Taguchi, Dr. Deming, of course, and then Russell Lakoff. And some highlights of what we did last time Russ would say, taking something apart, taking an automobile apart allows you to see how the parts work together, but you can go through all that trouble, put it back together, and not understand why the driver sits on the left-hand side of the car. That requires what Russ referred to as synthetic thinking. Analytic thinking, and this whole idea of analysis is when we go inward. But what's valuable sometimes is, there's value in looking inward, but there's also value in looking outward. And so there's different things you learn by going in versus going out. So it's not that one is better than the other. It's just it's two different focuses. Then remember the trip report summary, the infamous all straw and last straw organizations. So we're going to look at this more today. We talked about the conversations. And also, Deming referred to the system of profound knowledge as part of his theory of management. And what's powerful about it, the more you understand how these two organizations operate, the more you can use the model as a theory. Remember, I shared that Deming would say a theory is a prediction of the future with a chance of being wrong. And being wrong means it's time to update our theory, having learned. But I can't tell you how many times in my career at Rocketdyne where, we would, something would happen and we would just go back and think about, how would an all-straw organization handle this? How would a last-straw organization handle that? And use that for guidance as to what to expect. So it's and as Frans said, it could be disheartening to wake up and realize you work in an organization which is more a last straw than all straw. But part of the beauty of that is to understand what it means and to understand, develop a better sense of how your comments are interpreted. That if you're talking about working on something which is good, you may get a look like, people may think you're crazy because we've got all these crises to work on and you want to work on something which is good. So the better you can understand that, the better you can appreciate where they're coming from. And so that's why that, having that sense of being able to predict how the organization would operate would be invaluable to you. Again, you may not like where it's going, but at least you can be aware of it and then decide what to do with it. The wisdom piece from Makoff is, what are you going to do with your understanding? So we're presenting to you some very powerful ideas session by session. And the challenge is to know, what are you going to do with it? And there's times to act and there's times to be quiet. And that just becomes something you learn along the way is, being aware doesn't mean you always have to act on it. The organization may not be ready for you to act. Maybe you just have to spend more time developing others that can see and hear what you see and hear. And there's that becomes a near-term strategy. All right, we talked about survival skills. That's part of the survival skills of a last organization is develop colleagues that can, likewise understand what the opportunities are and what the challenges are. So we talked about this, how much time is spent discussing parts, task milestones that are good and completed on time, and how little that is in a last organization. We talked about a former coworker who left Rocketdyne to work in the bubble factory, and her comments, what should I focus on? What do you think I should focus on? I think I should focus on all the things that are broken. And what I want to share with you later is give you a sense of what I suggested should go off and do. That would be different. And so Dr. Deming said the prevailing style of management, that's the last straw, must undergo transformation. But the system cannot understand itself. The system does not people in that organization don't know where they are and what's possible. They're just used to it. And that's where your insights come in, is to helping them appreciate that contrast. The first step, Dr. Deming said, the first step is transformation of the individual. The transformation is discontinuous. It comes from an understanding of what he called the system of profound knowledge. The individual transform, perceives new meaning to life, to events, to numbers, to interactions between people, which is what, what we're looking at in the opening is, we're there's a different view of the world developing. The layout appears in 4 parts, all related to each other. So today's session is entitled Systems Thinking, but it includes all 4 aspects of what we're looking at. So we're not just looking at the systems piece alone. We're going to be talking today about variation, developing new theories of expanded theories of knowledge, and we're not going to forget the people piece. Okay. So now some new content.
Do you want to get into the opening question, Bill?
Say again?
Do you want to get into that opening question using the
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. So
Yes.
I want to invite everybody to get your phones out and either go to menti.com and use the 8-digit code, or scan the QR code that's on the screen. I can make it bigger this way. Is everybody in or still working on it?
Get this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Then I continue. Everybody in? Okay. So there's a question. The question is, did Dr. Deming say, if you can't measure it, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it? Please vote. We have 2 votes in, saying it's true. And I think we have all the votes in, 11, right?
Oh, cool. They're all in?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
That's 10-1, Bill. Do you want to get back on this later or right now?
Yeah. Well, go ahead. What were the results?
So the results are 10-1. 10 people saying it's true, 1 saying it's false. So people
No, that's interesting, because if you were to do a Google search, you'll find overwhelmingly that people believe Dr. Deming said that, but he didn't. It's one of the most famous misquotes of Dr. Deming. This that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And we'll look at what he did say. So sure, thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we're gonna some new content. Okay, Russ Akoff would say that efficiency, which is what cell phones allow, tools and techniques allow, is doing things right, doing them well. But he contrasted that with effectiveness, which he said is the ability to do the right thing. He also said the better you do the wrong thing, the wronger you become. And he added to that, it is better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing right. And this becomes a challenge for last straw organizations, is doing the wrong thing right. Also, and this is in here to build upon what Frans said at the beginning, Akoff would say, anyone who's ever taught a course is well aware of the fact that the person who learns the most from the lesson is the one doing the teaching. He'd say, you can't learn unless you can teach. The old-fashioned one-room schoolhouse was a room in which students taught students, and the teacher was merely a source of information available for help, not someone who spoke at them, spilling adult information. And there's a link that I'll send in that all of you can take a look at. The next couple of days. It's a really insightful interview by the BBC with Russ back in 2007. And so being able to explain these ideas to others is what allows Frans and I to become better and better. Is the better you the better you can present it, the better you understand it. And so for those of you have had a chance of explaining ideas from last time, keep doing it. This comes from the Leader's Handbook, which is a brilliant book, spiral bound, put out by Peter Schultes about, I think, 2000, 2001. And he says system refers to interactions, right? And interdependencies on a large scale. And we think of what we did last week, we went from having separate teams to integrating the teams, and then you can go higher and higher and higher within organizations. Systems consist of subsystems, or if they're small enough in scope, processes. He says, what's the point at which something is no longer a system or a subsystem, but becomes a process? He says, I don't know. It's not science. But it's a neat model to think about. Every system is made up of subsystems, which is made up of subsystems, which is made up of subsystems. And then you get down to what he calls a process. Like rolling the dice is a process. Processes refer to the components of a system. Processes have purpose and functions of their own, but by themselves, processes cannot accomplish the purpose of the system, which requires leadership to integrate, as you saw in the 4th week of the simulation. This comes from Dr. Deming. It says, a system includes the future. Management and leaders have another job, namely to govern their own future, not to be merely victims of circumstances. Preparation for the future includes lifelong learning for employees. It includes constant scanning of the environment, technical, social, economic scanning to perceive the need for innovation, new products, new services, or innovation of method. A company can, to some extent, govern its own future. What Russ would say, I think he wrote a book on it, he'd say, plan or be planned for. That if you're not planning for the future, then you're at the mercy of somebody else doing it for you. All right, so now insights from the red bead experiment. And so on the Patagonia website for this program, there are links to some videos, one of which is a short video watching Dr. Deming and what he called willing workers, where he would pretend to be the manager of the company, a company that's job it is to make white beads. And then he gets from the audience volunteers, which he called willing workers. And the production process involved taking a white paddle, dipping it into a bowl of red beads, which are defects, and white beads, which are good product, And I'll go into a little bit more detail. So there's a bigger view. So in that bowl would be 4,000 beads, roughly 3,200 white and 800 red. So it's roughly an 80-20 split. In the production process that Dr. Deming would demonstrate, and going through it with anywhere between 4 and 6 willing workers would take nearly an hour. So the video that we provided is a condensation of him explaining it, and then the workers going through this process. And so they begin, and you see here, there's 2 bowls. So he would have them pour the beads from one bowl into the other, and then back into the first bowl as a mixing process. He would then have them stick the paddle in, move it around a little bit. That's the making of the red bead, the making of the beads, with a goal of white, not red. And then he would take the willing worker would take the paddle to an inspector, and the inspector would count, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 red beads would be measured by the inspector. And then the results would be recorded. And he would go through, if it was 4, either 4 volunteers or 6 volunteers. So all of them would go through it once. That's day 1. They'd go through it again. Day 2, go through it again. Day 3, and then go through it again, typically 4 days. And this represents a standard set of results. So in this case, he had 6 willing workers. So think about what conclusions, how would a meat organization look at this data where the red beads represent defects? What would be the mindset of a last straw organization looking at these production results? Any takers?
Yeah. Syria is the worst one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Siri and Tim are going to get blamed, right? Put on probation, maybe given incentives. What else?
Yeah, Larry's the best one.
Oh, absolutely. Larry's going to be your boss. It's like Chantal, get ready. Right? So what do you see in this that reminds you of life in a last straw organization? So one is, blaming the results on the workers, right?
Yeah.
Giving credit, right?
Yeah.
What else might you see? How else might you see this data looked upon in a last straw organization? Besides, praising one and blaming the others, what else? What other interpretations of this data are you going to see in a last straw organization?
They're only focused on what's going wrong.
Yes. Right. And what else?
Cost is too high.
We got that. What?
The cost
What
is too
about-
high. You have to get rid of some people.
Oh, absolutely. Well, another thing you're going to see is, right, as soon as we go from 6 to 11, guess what? I mean, 6 over here, even here, after the first round, David looks pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Then the next round, David's 11. What's his boss gonna, his or her boss gonna do based on that data point?
Yeah.
Ask questions at the minimum.
That's right. But you notice, so in the last organization, not only is there going to be a focus on the overall results over here, but day by day, there's going to be beatings.
Yeah.
Right? It goes up, we got to beat them. Goes up again, we're going to beat them. Over here, it goes down. Okay, they listened. So what Dr. Deming proposed is, in an all-star organization, instead of looking at those data points in isolation, a better way is to look at the results. So these are the workers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is, in sequence. If I take the round 1 data, the round 2 data, now what conclusions do you see?
But
Everyone's doing fine.
Yeah. So what Dr. Deming is saying is, if you take this data, plot it over time, which is known as a run chart, and then use the variation and use the actual data, you can calculate what are known as control limits, which are roughly plus or minus 3 standard deviations from the average. And he said, if you go through the trouble of looking at it this way, then you can be able to see that the variation in the system, this variation is coming from the system. It's coming from where the beads are in the bowl, where they're placed, the angle at which the paddle comes in. All right. So instead of looking at 2 data points in isolation and saying who screwed up, how many things are different between the first 2 data points? What caused this difference? Is there one thing? Or is it many things? See, what Dr. Deming is saying is, there's a large number of things, you can almost say infinite, that are causing any 2 of these data points to be different. And those factors are the system. They come from the system. So if you've got variables in the system which are changing, if the inputs are changing all the time, then the output, the number of red beads, will be changing all the time. But then what Dr. Deming is proposing is within some bounds. And if they are within some bounds like this, then what Dr. Deming is saying is the system is stable. And stable has helped me understand what should I expect in the future. But one big point is, when you look at all that variation between here and here, instead of thinking they should be identical, right? So in the last organization, we think we should get the same results every day, that the marble, when it's dropped, should always land in the same spot. No, what Dr. Deming is saying is we should expect them to be different, but within some bounds if the system is stable. And so instead of thinking that same means identical, here what we're saying is same means there's going to be variation within some bound. That's our theory. Our theory is, let's go back here. Let's go back to the next. Okay, we'll get to it. So the lessons of the red bead from Dr. Deming is that the people wish to do their best. Right, that's life in a last organization. People are trying hard. They're trying to do a good job, even when they know they can't. There's a need to understand variation. A realization that the red beads are caused by the system, not the workers taken separately. Right, that's classic all-straw thinking. And the workers are part of the system, which is also all-straw awareness. So in this simple exercise where you've got these workers, this bowl, all the same beads, the beads never change, the paddle never changes. This is what you could refer to as a closed system, meaning nothing inside of that, the results are not going to change within that bound because nothing inside of here is changing. But that's not the real world. In the real world, the supplier of the beads is changing, perhaps, because their suppliers are changing. So in this very simple model, we expect the results to be between these limits because all of the inputs are this. I mean, they're all the inputs are controlled, meaning that it's we're not changing the ball, we're not changing the workers, we're not changing the instructions. So if all those things are the same, then we expect the results to remain the same. And we're going to get this level of variation. And because it's closed and there's no outside influences, then that level of variation is predictable. And what causes all those things to be different, Dr. Deming referred to as common causes. And common means present always. So again, instead of looking at two data points, wondering who caused this, the worker caused it, it's the system which causes it. And the system is an infinite number of causes, which are each changing all the time. So if we take this data today and look to the past to calculate these three lines, what are we expecting in the future? What Dr. Deming would say is the role of these lines is to develop a theory from the past to predict the future. You may recall me when I was explaining in our son's third grade class how I had the young girl come up and I would drop the marble. She kept predicting where it will land. Then at one point I said, okay, where's it going to land now? And she drew a circle. She's just somewhere in here. What she is essentially doing is saying somewhere between these two lines. So based on the results up to that point, she was predicting the future. That's what a theory is, prediction of the future with a chance of being wrong. So now what I want to get into, if the system is open and the supplier of the beads might be changing their processes, which means the beads we're getting may not be similar to the beads we got before. Now the role of this chart is to, when we look at this data point and compare it to the control limits, what conclusion might we draw? All right, so if we're in an all-straw organization and we see the next data point is lower than this data point, is that cause for alarm in an all-straw organization? No. Because what we're saying is we expect it to be randomly above and below the average between these two lines. So as this fits, that's not news. Now, if we get a data point outside the limits, that's an indication that something has changed. Something in the system is different. And actually what Dr. Deming is referring to, by calling this a special cause, what he's saying is something outside the system, something has gone on which is outside of the system we had yesterday. So a common cause is a cause within our system, those we expect. The role of the control charts is to help us understand when the system is doing what it typically does, which is randomly causing us variation above and below the average within the limits. When this happens, that's an indication that something outside of our system is now inside our system, and that he refers to as a special cause. That this is not what we expect. So that's an indication. And based on that, you go back and look and say, something has changed. But this change is a bigger change than because we're getting data outside the control limits, this is a bigger change than usual. And ideally, this change is easy to find. The sooner you go plot the data, the sooner you look, the sooner you're going to see that we've made a change. And if you're in an all-straw organization where people are open, they're not being blamed, they may say, oh, we used the wrong material. Or I just open up a batch from the supplier, and now you're starting to realize, holy cow, the supplier, something in the supply chain has changed. But the sooner we have that the sooner we plot it, the sooner we could start to wonder. And by what Deming is saying is the role of the control charts is to say, if you're outside the limits, then go look, because now we've got reason to believe that something has changed, that our system is actually open, not closed. And so the idea of statistical process control, in control means predictable and stable, that the future will be like the past. And if we're seeing results that are out of control, it means we're seeing something, somehow our process has changed beyond what we're used to. Okay. So what do the red beads represent? They represent defective material that we're buying. They represent defects that the customer doesn't want. They represent things that are broken in our system. So how to eliminate them? Well, this is, like striving for zero defects. We could, stop buying them. So if the red beads are coming in from the supplier, then let's stop buying them. That's one way of getting rid of them. So what do the white beads represent? The white beads represent things that are going well. So when I asked our daughter in her classroom, she's an English teacher for like 12 and 13-year-olds. And I asked her, so what are the red beads in your classroom? And she said, it could be a door that won't close. It could be a window which is broken. It could be a computer that doesn't work. It could be, a projector that doesn't work. Those are the red beads. And I said, the white beads, could be a computer that works, a door that closes, a window which opens and closes. Those are the things that are going well. Okay. So now I'll get into the more on the first step questions. Dr. Deming said the first step is transformation of the individual. The transformation is discontinuous. The individual transforms, perceives new meaning to life, to interactions between people. So we can ask what is meant by the Deming philosophy. When I worked for the Deming Institute, one of my roles was answering questions, talking with people who asked, what is the Deming philosophy? So I explained it to them. And they would ask, is it widely applicable? And I'd say, why? And they'd say, well, I work for a nonprofit. I work in a school system. I work in healthcare. And Dr. Deming's examples are largely about manufacturing. So I'm just wondering, do they apply outside of manufacturing? Then I'd have to say, yeah. And I explain why they apply everywhere. And part of the role of the examples like Last Straw and All Straw are to, create an awareness that this is bigger than manufacturing. And then that led me to posing with people the question, how did you do on the exam? And so part of the reason I want to share this question with you and explore it is I'm willing to bet every one of you has either asked this question or answered this question, most likely in English and in Dutch. All right, is that a fair statement that you've seen this question before?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was being interviewed years ago by a coworker's sister. She was a college student studying business. Her assignment was to interview someone in a business, ask what they do, and then write a term paper about that. So we spoke for somewhere around an hour. She asked me what I do. I said, I ask people questions. Because she was a student, I said, she said, what kind of question? So I said, well, the question could be, how did you do on the exam? So I asked her to draw a flow diagram, a very simple process. I said there are inputs and the output is your grade. So I said, what might be an input to this system? And she said her talent. And I said, can you think of another one? And she said her commitment. And I said, okay, good. Can you think of another one? And she said, my energy. When I asked her if she could think of another one, she could not think of another input. So I waited, I gave her 15, 20 seconds. She could not think of a fourth input. So I suggested one to her. I said, have you ever had a situation where another student asked a question during a class and you learned from the professor's answer to that question? She said it happens all the time. And that affects her grade. So I said, well, then that means other students are an input to the system. And she said, yes, okay. I said, given other students are an input, can you think of other inputs? And now very quickly, she says, my professor, my parents, and my brother. I then asked her, how many inputs are there? She said, there's an infinite number. So I said, well, wait a minute. If there's an infinite number, why were you stuck at 3? And she says, well, I just wasn't thinking of all those things. So if you can appreciate that the system is infinitely large, it includes the publisher of the books, the author of the books, the staff who maintains the equipment in the classroom, all kinds of staffing people. If that list is that long, my question to you is, does this question reflect all of these inputs? And it's either yes or no. And if your answer is no, then how might you change this question to reflect all of these inputs? Any thoughts there? So does this question reflect all of those inputs? If you believe yes, fine. If you believe no, how might you change the question to reflect all of those inputs?
What inputs do you need to come to a good grade?
Okay. And who was that?
That was Peter, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Peter. All right, who else wants to take a shot at this?
This is Wilfred. Were you well prepared for the exam?
Were you well prepared? And who is that?
Wilfred.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Wilfred. Okay, I remember you. Okay.
Oh, okay. Is that a good sign or a bad sign?
Well, we just want to make sure you alienate your Turkish bosses.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on this question? Does it change? And if it does change, how would you change it?
Which factors have influences on the exam? This is Marjolein, by the way.
Okay. Which factors have an influence on the exam? Well, it looks like all of these.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so is this really the input or is it?
Yes, those are all the inputs. Those are all the variables, factors. Those are all the inputs. I mean, what she said was there's an infinite number of inputs. She realized she was stuck at 3, and now she's realizing it's really enormous. And so relative to this question, does this question stay as it is or does it change?
Was the outcome what you expected of it?
Okay, and who is that?
Peter Paul.
Okay. All right, so Peter Paul, So let me change the context. And let's say, Peter Paul, let's say I am the professor and you are the student, okay? And let's say the rest of you see me, I'm the professor, and I say to Peter Paul, how did you do on the exam? So my question to the rest of you is, what does that question from me, the professor, to Peter Paul say about my relationship to him?
So the current question focuses mainly on you doing the exam, so it leaves out a lot of other inputs. So that's the issue I have with the current question, because you hint on the first three you mentioned, and not so much on all the other factors.
Well, again,
So
but I want your attention on if I'm asking Peter Paul the question, if you see me ask him, you know, at the end of the class, if you see me walk up to him and say, how did you do on the exam? What does that question say about my relationship to Peter Paul? People will say, I care about him, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're interested. Yeah.
Okay, what else does that question say about, very specifically, what does that question say about my relationship to him? I care about him, what else?
This is Saskia. I think you would like to know whether you did your job okay as a teacher. So you want
Okay,
some
okay.
feedback?
Sure.
I think it's more focused on the exam itself, but not on the learning. So maybe we should ask a session, did you learn, or did you learn anything?
Well, let me throw this out. Am I a participant in Peter Paul's learning?
Yes.
Yes.
But does that question make me a participant? Or does that question make me an observer?
An observer.
So someone said it makes me an observer. Who was that?
That was Peter.
Peter. So why does that question make me an observer?
Because you don't know what you've taught him, and you don't know what let's say what the outcome of the exam was for the student, for Peter Paul.
Well, I may know the output. I mean,
Okay.
no, meaning that well, my point is that whether or not I know the output, this question makes me an observer.
Mhm.
If I was a participant in his learning, which you see on that list of inputs, am I a participant in his learning?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
If I'm a participant, is that the question I ask?
No.
What question would I ask if I was a participant?
How did the exam go? Take away the
Yeah.
you from the question.
All right. Keep going. You're getting
Maybe,
close.
Chantal, maybe what did you learn from me?
Now you're still using the you.
How did we do on the exam?
Mhm.
Yes. Right? Is this a team activity?
Yes. Yes. It is.
So why isn't the question, how did we do? Right? Does we make me an observer or a participant?
A participant.
Right. I'll give you a classic case of observer participant at home. Imagine something happens with our son and my wife says, look at what your son did. Is it your son or is it our son? Right?
Depends on what he did.
That's right. So if it's something good, and I say, look at what my son did, and my wife says, My?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what we're going to get to next is imagine an environment in which the questions are, how did we do? How did we do? How did we do? That is a question which is about working together, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
So which organization is that? The all straw or the last straw that has this vocabulary?
All straw.
Oh, sure.
Yes, that's the all straw organization, right? And what does this look like?
Mhm.
Right? Does that look like the last straw organization?
Yes.
Yep.
So if we did the trip report and I said, imagine you visited both organizations, but instead of calling it all or last, I call it we and me, guess what? You get the same results.
Yeah.
So what we did back in October, we looked at it from the vantage point of all straw and last straw. But I guarantee you, if I presented it to you as me and we would get the same results. And so part of the reason we did last straw, all straw back in October is that it's easier to explain last and all. Part of the reason we're looking at me and we today is to reinforce this idea that collaboration is not how are you doing? It is how are we doing? And that simple change in pronoun is enormous. Again, there's a difference between my wife saying to me, look at what your son did, which is putting the blame on me, and saying, look what our son did, which is us mutually having responsibility. So then we get into what percent of organizations are me or we, and we have the same answer. The majority are me organizations. But there's no such thing as me or we. Really, it's a sense of direction. And we're going to look at that in the second hour. All right, next. How important is customer satisfaction? And this is a bumper sticker I came across. Honk if you demand satisfaction. Here's a truck, delivering satisfaction. And so the question I ask is going to be one of the questions we pose to you during the collaboration session. So we'll come back to that. And next, I want to give some insights on the paradigms of variation. And this is the last topic we're going to talk about in the exploration session. So imagine each of you are employed as the senior buyer in the purchasing department of a design and assembly company, and you have the responsibility of selecting the supplier of these short metal tubes that are used in one of our products. And what I'm going to share is a highly idealized and simplified situation where you have received the following decision feedback from 4 suppliers, as well as your company's design team. So your job at the end of this, we're going to ask you to make a decision, and you'll make that decision as a group during the collaboration session. I'm just providing you the information you need to discuss that, collaborate on that decision. So imagine all 4 suppliers, which we refer to as 1, 2, 3, and 4. Imagine they all quote the same purchase price. That's amazing, but imagine that is the case. Imagine all 4 suppliers guarantee the same delivery schedule. They both say it'll be 10,000 a day. Whatever it is we need, all 4 of them could do that. Imagine they all say that all the tubes they deliver will be white beads, no red beads. Everything meets requirements on the outer diameter of the tubes, which is the only characteristic we have to pay attention to. imagine that all 4 suppliers provide histograms, which come from control charts like we looked at earlier, of their outer diameter results, and they're guaranteed to remain the same. So all of them are saying their processes are in control, will never change. So the average never changes, the standard deviation never changes, and the tubes are used in assembly operations as they are purchased. So there's no modifications. We're using them, they go directly from the supplier, and we immediately install them in our product. Next, imagine there's a lower requirement for the tube and an upper requirement for the tube, the diameter. And also imagine that there's an ideal value. And they were provided with cooperation of the design team in partnership with the production team at all 4 suppliers. So the 4 distributions are what you see here. There's the ideal value. That's the lower requirement in red. That's the upper requirement in red. And when you have this information, right, which is ideal, we're asking you, we'll ask you to, in the collaboration session, discuss who to buy from, 1, 2, 3, or 4. You also have the option of saying, I'll take any one of them. It doesn't matter. And the last point of clarification is that the ideal value, when you ask, what do you mean by ideal value? And the instructions are to the buyer, that's the value we prefer. Okay. So in the collaboration session, we want you to, so grab some coffee, some water, take a bio break. And then in your groups, look at these 3 questions. 1, does the achievement of 100% white beads end quality improvement of the white beads? So if all the beads are white, does improvement of quality stop? That's the first question. Question 2, on a scale from 0, unimportant, to 10, extremely important, how important do you think is customer satisfaction? And 3, which supplier would you buy from of those 4 distributions in that exercise, including the option, I'll take any one of them? Okay. So we'll go ahead and so go ahead now and go to the respective rooms. I know there's a few of you that are online, and we'll resume in roughly a half hour. Now we're going to look at the insights lecture.
Or do we go to the questions?
Hold
first?
on. Yeah, we'll be right there. We'll be right there.
Okay.
So in the second hour, in the second session, I want to look at the red bead experiment, customer expectations, paradigms of variation, and trip reports. But first, go ahead, Sjoerd.
First, we're going back to
Menti.
yes.
Ja.
Yeah.
Oké.
Voting for the first question.
En dan mag iedereen wat stellen. Ja, dan kan ik het ook
lekker doen.
moeilijk wel voor elkaar te
Ja. We tellen alles op en deden het.
Als jij weer tegen. 13.
So there you go.
14. We got a 100% score.
Yeah.
-1.
Impressive.
So Bill, what do you think?
I think we're making progress. But the headaches will continue.
Okay.
So do you want to get into this?
No. Go ahead to the next question.
Okay.
Go through all 3 questions.
Sure. So the next question,
Oeh, ja.
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 on a
Toch
scale,
antwoorden nu.
Hier. Ja. .8.
8.8. That's rather high, I would say.
Yeah.
Right. Any comments, or shall I move on? To
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
There's our last question. Which supplier to buy from?
Interesting.
It's funny to see that groups are defecting the group answer.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool.
All right. So that's everyone in on those?
Yeah.
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 Okay, fantastic. Okay, fantastic. All right, so let's,
Ja.
so then I've got a reshare.
Yeah, you gotta take back control.
Ja.
Good. Let me slide that over. Oops. Okay, good. All right. So now we'll go to the red bead experiment, revisit that in the insights. So we looked at that. So last time we looked at what I call question number 1 of quality management. Has a requirement been met? There's only 2 answers, yes or no. So we earlier looked at the variation in the red beads, number of red beads. And then you realize that the bowling ball in the doorway is a white bead. If it was in the hallway, it would be a red bead.
Ja.
Quality is defined, right? This is classic me organization. Quality is meeting requirements. Do it right the first time. Missing is question 2, which is how many ways are there to meet requirements, which is the transition from week 1 in the simulation to week 2. And so the reason we sort through the fruit, which is all good at the supermarket, is that there's variation in juiciness of the oranges. And so they may all meet requirements, but if we looked at juiciness, we would see variation. That's if we got sophisticated. So we could, somebody could look at the juiciness of the oranges and look at it with a set of control limits. And so, although we didn't look at control limits in October, this is like the next step of that information. This is what we organizations do, is they monitor where it makes sense, whatever that characteristic is, just looking to see, is it within the control limits? And then ideally the control limits are within the specification limits. And so what you're pointing out, what you're realizing is the white beads have variation. Variation in size, variation in weight, variation in diameter. And that variation is what we saw in week 2 in the simulation. And so part of the role of this question is to make sure you didn't forget that. So, and but actually 2 things is, one is to give you a sense of Dr. Deming's classic red bead experiment. And 2 is to put that in the context of what we did last time. Yes, there's white bead variation. And so it's no surprise if I ask audiences, not this audience of clues, when I ask my college students, about this, they will say, yes, it can be improved, but how? And they do not think about white bead variation. They know nothing about variation in things that are good, which was the exposure we got back in October. So a month has gone by and you've not forgotten that. That's pretty good. Okay. So looking at data over time as a run chart, adding control limits as control charts, and then that's all in the realm of what's known as statistical process control. That's a tool. Process flow diagrams are tools. Design of experiments are sophisticated methods for changing our processes. Likewise, Taguchi methods. There's a lot of tools and techniques. But what I want to differentiate is that tools, like a cell phone is a tool. How you use it is a technique. And me and we organizations may use the same tools and techniques. That's not what makes them different. What makes them different is how the tools are used. And so then we get into concepts and strategies, and there's a lot. And so down here we have the Deming philosophy and the me and the we, and the understanding of red beads are caused by the system, so we don't blame the willing workers. So concepts represent abstract ideas, as well as fundamental building blocks of thoughts and beliefs, and strategies represent a plan for action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim guided by a concept. So the role of this course, this entire program, yeah, we're going to talk about tools and techniques. There's nothing wrong with tools and techniques. But what me organizations are brilliant at is not using a cell phone to blame everybody. So in a me organization, we're using technology to speed up blame. That's one way of using technology. Whereas in a we organization, the technology is used to unite. And so part of the role of the sessions that Frans and I lead are giving you concepts and strategies, tools and techniques. And then next month, right, you'll hear from Sjoerd and Elisa talking about helping you with strategies. So how do you put this into action? So my friend, what should I focus on? I think I should focus on all the things that are broken. And what I shared with her is, we talked about there was a process. They had a tank in the back room, a couple 100-gallon tank that mixed soap and water together. And then that was, through piping, it led to the feed system. And what I suggested to her is, I said, how often do you monitor the bacteria? She said, well, we don't monitor it that often at all. And so the suggestion I gave her was, what if you start to monitor it? What if you put in place control limits? This would allow you to see trouble coming before you violate the specification limit. And so the idea is, looking at the variation may be a worthwhile effort if it's costly to violate the requirement. If it's not costly to violate the requirement, so in our home, we don't monitor, how much light is coming out of the light bulbs. We just wait until they break and replace them. We don't monitor how much food the cats or the dog eat. But if our son and his girlfriend monitor pets that are very expensive, and they don't monitor it either. But boy, if I had a very, very expensive animal, then I'd be monitoring a whole bunch of things, trying to be ahead of trying to detect the sickness as soon as possible. So the idea is, monitoring the variation sometimes makes sense, sometimes it's not worthwhile. So now let's look at customer expectations. So we looked at that data. So here's an experience my wife and I encountered when we were driving a number of years ago to visit some friends. And the minivan broke down. It broke down on Christmas Day. So what causes a consumer to be disappointed by a product or a service?
Not meeting.
What is it? Not what?
Not meeting expectations.
That's right. And that's a very important, is the fact that it broke down is not the issue. The fact that it broke down sooner than we expected, that it didn't meet our expectations. So what if I told you the transmission failed at 10,000 miles on Christmas Day? What was our expectation for the life of the transmission?
Yeah, longer, more miles.
And also let me add that that's a Toyota minivan.
Oh, then less.
When our friends came to pick us up, and the friend knows that we love Toyota, his comment was, "How does this data point change my theory about Toyota?" And so what I learned from students a number of years ago who worked in the worked in many industries, and they said, "Bill, don't ever buy anyone's first model year, including Toyota. So we only buy Toyotas, but we will never again buy the first model year." So there's a value proposition. The value is how many miles we get out of the transmission. There's an expectation of, let's say, 200,000 miles. So disappointment is failure to meet expectations. What do we call it when our expectations are met?
Satisfaction.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm not. Yeah. So if my transmission breaks down at the point which I expected, I'm not cheering.
What I find
So-
is that what I find a very common explanation of satisfaction is expectations are met. Disappointment is less than that. Satisfaction is my expectations are met. And then when I ask people, what do you call it when your expectations are exceeded? It's not uncommon they say delighted. So the value proposition I would propose is delight is, when I have a meal or I have an experience which is far better than what I'm paying for. So it's going to an Indonesian restaurant, having a meal that seems like it's worth that much more than what we paid for it. So delight is when it seems like I'm getting more than I expect, and it almost feels like I'm stealing, but I'm not stealing. It's legal. Satisfaction is paying 100 euros for a meal and it's worth 100 euros. Disappointment is paying 100 euros and having a meal that I think is worth 25 euros. So disappointment is feeling cheated. Delight is feeling like you got something that you shouldn't get, but it's allowed. By comparison, then what is satisfaction? It's getting what you expect. It's like breaking even. So who do we tell in our personal lives when we're disappointed by a product or a service?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody. All right. Who do we tell when we're delighted?
A few.
Yeah.
So people are telling me that research shows that we will tell 7 times more people when we're disappointed than when we're delighted. That we're far more likely to tell people we're disappointed than when we're delighted. The bigger question is, who do we tell when we're satisfied?
No.
No one.
No one. Well, then how can it be important? So my conclusion is that satisfaction is highly overrated, not unimportant. So in a me organization, we think satisfaction is everything. In fact, my theory is, I have a theory as to why we're so excited about satisfaction, which is what you saw. I mean, 8.8 is we think satisfaction is a really big deal. My theory is the reason we think satisfaction is so important is that we're so used to being disappointed. How's that for lousy competition?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's what I want you to do. The next time you have a reunion with your family, maybe for the holidays when you get together, right? Send an email out to all of your cousins and loved ones and ask and say that when we get together for Christmas and the holidays, that one of the things you want to do is have them share their satisfaction stories.
So this is why it's difficult, because we have user satisfaction surveys every once a year. And it's difficult for people to get them motivated to give us feedback on how we can improve. Because most of the time you will get people responding that are disappointed.
Yes.
Or some that are delighted, but nobody is filling it in when it's satisfied.
Well, and then worse than that is, unless you have a random sample, what you're getting is distorted based on what you just said, right?
Mhm.
And that becomes frustrating. In a me environment, you're used to people complaining because they're the ones that speak up. The ones that are satisfied, they're not going to bother. Maybe you'll hear something from the delight people.
Mhm.
So what Dr. Deming would talk about is, when you're doing a survey, what you'd really like to do is randomly ask people. Because if it's random, then you've got a chance of hearing from all three groups. If all you're doing is hearing from the complainers, you may be overreacting.
Yeah.
All right. But again, this is not to say disappointment and satisfaction is bad, but it is to say we have to manage satisfaction, disappointment, and delight. And there's a slide on that to follow. Dr. Deming would say, this is from the New Economics, he said, there's so much talk about customers' expectations. Meet the customer's expectations. He said, the fact is that the customer expects only what you and your competitors have led them to expect. He's a rapid learner, he said. The customer generates nothing. The customer did not ask for electric light, for photography, for the telegraph, or the telephone. All right, that's Dr. Deming in 1993. Here's Steve Jobs in 2000. He says, this is what the customer pays us for, to sweat all of these details so it's easy and pleasant for them to use our computers. We're supposed to be really good at this, but it doesn't mean we don't listen to customers. But it's hard for them to tell you what they want when they've never seen anything like it. Take desktop video editing. He says, I never got one request from someone who wanted to edit movies on his computer, yet now when people see it, they say, oh my God, that's great. That's what Deming is saying. Henry Ford was once quoted as saying, if he asked customers what they wanted, it would have been faster horses. So it doesn't mean you don't ask. See, in a me organization, you ask and then they tell you, and then you're stuck in that loop. In a we organization, you can ask, but in asking, what you're finding out is where they are. You could be way ahead of them. So it doesn't mean, so in a me organization, there's kind of this commitment to provide them what they want. In a we organization, you have the option of doing that. You also have the option of offering them something they haven't asked for because they've not heard about it from you or your competitors. And then Jobs says, he says, we think the Mac will sell zillions, but we didn't build the Mac for anybody else. We built it for ourselves. We were the group of people who were going to judge whether it was good. We weren't going to go out and do market research. We just wanted to build the best thing we could build. So the conclusion is a better way to operate an organization is to invest resources with the ability to manage delight, satisfaction, and disappointment. So if we're operating a restaurant, how many aspects of the restaurant will be delightful? So if it's in a we environment, if we're working together in a we environment, and we have a restaurant where we all work together, how many aspects of the customer experience will be delightful? All of them?
No,
And who is that?
Wilfred.
Wilfred. So if not all of them, how many of them will be delightful?
Yeah, depending on how, then I should name a
Well,
percentage.
Well, first, Wilfred, why is it not all? See, in a me organization, it's satisfaction everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So in a we organization, why is it not delight everywhere?
I think everyone accepts some failures, some flaws to a certain extent.
Well, my proposal is you want to have at least one thing that makes it delightful. Otherwise, why are people coming to our restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is that it doesn't have to be everything, but it has to be a few things. So for most of them, it could be location. So people come because it's the closest pizza place or the closest Indian restaurant. But in a we organization, they're very deliberate, and they're saying, we've got the best beer list, we've got the best wine list, we've got the best salad bar, we've got the best cheesecake. But with everything else, it's no different than our competitors. So the idea is managing delight, satisfaction, and disappointment is finding a few aspects of the restaurant that we believe is that people are coming here because they know we have the best cheesecake in town. And then we want to maintain that differentiator if others try to copy us. So then we're saying we need to discover an opportunity to invest, whether it's the cheesecake, whether it's the background music. There could be a singer. It could be a pub where we have different bands playing, and we've got the best new music, the best jazz music, but that's our differentiator. So we put our money into that, and everything else is satisfactory, and there's some things that are disappointing, but we're in agreement as to music. We believe music and jazz music is drawing our customers, and we believe that's how we've built this business. And then you can do customer research to find out if indeed that is why they're coming. But the idea is just like there's a place to meet requirements and there's a place to do more than that. Satisfaction needs to be managed. And the challenge is the discovery of opportunities for investment is limited by how we're conditioned to think. So we need what me organizations have is thinking that promotes better discovery. That's not thinking you're going to find in a me organization. All right. So now let's look at the paradigms of variation. And so it's an interesting set of results, different than what I'm used to. That's okay. So the four, so this exercise I started back in, I was telling the group I was in back in 1995. And what I mentioned is if I did not show you the distributions, if I gave you the same price, same schedule, they all meet requirements, distributions, if I never talked about the distributions, would you believe that the answer would have been any? That if I don't show people the distributions, is it likely that everyone would say it doesn't matter?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what I refer to as paradigm A. Paradigm A is all we have to do is meet requirements. And so what are the requirements? The requirement for a goal is that the ball is fully across the line. And so this is life in a me organization. We want everything to meet requirements. So the goal is 0 defects. And this is the black and white thinking of week 1 of the simulation. That's paradigm A. It's good or it's bad. It's good or it's bad. Okay. Typically, and this group is a little bit different. So I've done this exercise hundreds of times. I would give everyone a 3x5 card. I'd ask them to write down their answer and submit it. So if they stated it, others wouldn't copy their answer. And the majority of people being asked this question, and this is and all of you are not a normal group, but typically anywhere between 75 and 85% take number 4, 20 to 25% take number 3. Hardly ever does anyone take 1 or 2. After number 3 being the second most popular choice, any becomes the third most popular choice. Now we're going to look at why. And so I'm going to look at these two words, precision and accuracy. Accuracy is defined as deviation, variation from the ideal. Precision is deviation from each other. So if we're throwing darts at a dartboard, low accuracy relative to being on target is what you're seeing here, and low precision. If we increase precision without increasing accuracy, then we're very consistent over here. If we increase accuracy without precision, then we end up with this result. If we increase accuracy and precision, then we get this result. So relative to these two words, which term, accuracy or precision, is what we think about relative to the term standard deviation of a set of data? Any thoughts there?
It's precision.
Yeah, because standard deviation is the average deviation from the average. So if we're influenced by precision, that's what I refer to as paradigm B. So paradigm B is heightened focus on, we want things to be precise. Which distribution wins based on paradigm B?
Number 4.
Number 4. Which distribution has the highest process capability index that the Six Sigma people are excited, talk about CP or CPK? Which has the highest process capability index?
Number 3.
No, it turns out
Oh.
process capability index is precision, not accuracy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Paradigm C is a focus on accuracy. So that would be which? Right, that's 3. So when I would ask people in the past to say, why do you like 4? And they will say, it has least variation. Then I say, least variation from what? And they say, from each other. That's also known as piece-to-piece consistency. When I ask people, why do you like 3? They say it has least variation from the ideal. So those are 2 different ways of looking at variation. And so what I'm sharing with you here, insight-wise, is if you don't have the distributions, people say it doesn't matter. As soon as you show the distributions with an ideal value, people will choose precision over accuracy 3-1. But then there are a handful that will take number 3. How many of you, if you were given the choice, would take 4 and move it over? Most of you?
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you this, and we'll look at this in a future session. Which do you think is easier to do? Move 4 over or make 3 more accurate?
Move 4 over, Wilfred.
Yeah.
Peter, same, yeah.
Yeah. And here's what's cool is me organizations have an incredible ability to be very consistent around this end or this end. They know which end is easiest to achieve. So if it's a hole diameter, me organizations it's not uncommon. They figure out how to get really close over here. And if it's an outer diameter, they know how to get really close over here. Just as if you tell your teenage daughter to be home by midnight, she knows how to be really close over here. But if I tell my college students I want the term paper to be between 5 and 20 pages, they know how to be really consistent over here. So what's powerful, Wilfred, is it's not uncommon. Again, we'll look at the numbers next time, when Frans and I present in January. But it is often easier to move this over. And the economics come from Dr. Taguchi's loss function, which is the assembly time issues we saw in the week 3 and 4 of the simulation. And so the idea is that being close to target in a weak organization, the benefit shows up at integration. And so the economics of integration is, how much money do I spend to move this over? But instead of in a me organization, the benefit of moving it over is to have less scrap and less rework. Well, for this data, there is no scrap, there is no rework to begin with. So in a me organization, is there any motivation for moving 4 to this ideal in a me organization?
Nope.
Well,
No, none at all. None at all. And in fact, they would so love this accuracy, they would say, let's go put our effort into making 3 narrower, which, as you'll see, is more work. So what I explain to my coworkers at Rocketdyne, especially the manufacturing folks, is if we go around the organization and find out what the distributions are, if it's number 3, don't do anything. If we have for a given situation close, this amount of variation in the ideal, I would say there's no reason to make that narrower. Let's go put our money elsewhere, taking distributions like 4 and sliding them over. And so my theory at Rocketdyne was, if we can get people to become aware of ideal, where that improves integration, that improves use, sorry about that, then going around doing that become priorities. So again, that's taking 3 and not doing anything because we're close to target, taking 4 and moving it over, but taking 3 and making it narrower, that's a lot of work. And it may not be worthwhile. So the beauty is, for people like you in manufacturing, is awareness of 4, awareness of moving it over. That's good money, in my experience. Again, depends upon the impact downstream, as you saw in the simulation activity. How much money are we going to save over there and getting things assembled faster? Or it could be where it takes, it's an extra effort to put things together based on integration. But that becomes an entirely different conversation. Those are conversations in a we organization, not in a me organization. And now let's look at the trip reports. So we have, right, the me and the we organizations. Okay, fine. Right, instead of asking if an organization is me or we, really it's about what direction is it moving. And what I want to look at here is we're so used to organizations being primarily me. And what I want to share with you is it possible that these organizations started over here?
Yes.
Right? So how does this become this? How does that happen?
How this is Wilfred. I don't know how it happens, but I think this is a typical way of a growing organization.
Yes.
So start up
Yes,
in a small group,
yes.
the result counts. And then you start growing and then it becomes more individual.
Yeah, my proposal, Wilfred, is that I start the company in my garage. I am highly motivated. I know where everything goes, right? Now I have a customer. I am constantly in contact with them. I have suppliers. But in a one-person organization that I start in my garage, I'm on top of this, right?
Yeah.
But then I get busy and I hire you, Wilfred, and I say, Wilfred, I want you to be the goalkeeper on the team, right?
Yeah.
Then I hire Marshall and I say, Marshall, and I want you to be the striker. Right. Then I hire Peter Paul and I say, I want you to be on defense. And what am I doing as I hire each of you? And let's say I hire you directly out of college, not from other me organizations. So even if I bring you out of, I take you without the, I'm aware that there's these organizations that create workers that, are heads down. So I take these excited college students and bring them in. What begins to happen is I hire each of you. What begins to happen is I give each of you a job and you stay in that role, right? Think back to week 1 of the simulation. For how long did each of you stay in your role?
The whole day.
Yeah. So the idea is in the beginning, if you're running the company in the beginning, you're running around doing everything. Then you hire people and inadvertently you're giving them boxes to stay in. And next thing you know, you're over here. But the idea is it could move further and further. So, until you're out of business. So the bigger challenge is to understand the dynamics. And so for those who have shared feedback on your organizations, so I say, if we look at this block and you've got people looking over there, so look at the people stuff. What is the time focus of the people in this environment?
Sjoerd?
Very short. They're focused. They want to get through the day, right?
Yeah.
When there are problems, they go to the past. And my running joke when I worked at Rocketdyne was being strategic in a me organization is thinking about Friday while it's Monday.
Yeah.
So in a me, part of what makes a me organization, what gives it trouble is what is relative to the senior executives of a me organization. What is their prayer every day relative to how the company operates? What prayer are they essentially saying to themselves every day to stay in business? Well, let me say this. Is it possible that people in a me organization are very rigid, right? So they stay in their box, heads down, do what they're told, focus on today, right?
Yeah.
Given that what prayer are the executives saying to themselves every day in that environment?
I will do my best.
What I believe what they're praying is, I hope the world never changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want the future to be like today. Because boy, if the world changes, guess what? We're in trouble. And this is what Akoff called plan or be planned for. What Akoff's talking about is, in a we organization, you create the future you want. You have that potential. And if not, you've got the ability to adapt quickly. All right, did we talk about this last time? Do you remember me bringing up, will the question in that environment, will the report be done by tomorrow? Does that sound familiar?
No,
we didn't.
no.
Okay. So if I say to one of you in a me organization, will the report be done by tomorrow? You know what the answer is going to be, right?
I'm too busy.
I don't think so. In a me environment, if I say, will the report be done by tomorrow? What answer am I expecting?
Yes.
Absolutely. Anything short of that, we got other people to do your job. And next thing you know, Chantal is your boss. All right. So the idea is that, can you appreciate how this behavior in people creates this environment?
Yeah.
So what me organizations do is force the environment to be neat and clean, but still treat people the same way. What Dr. Deming appreciated is, when you treat people this way, you get this environment. But what me organizations try to do is they try to make the environment neat, clean, and organized, but still have people acting this way, which means neat, clean, and organized doesn't last very long. So in order to move in that direction, the focus is, how do we focus? How do we shift? How do we get these people to become like these people? So of all the executives that went through seminars with me when Rocketdyne was owned by Boeing, the highest ranking executive, when he looked at the bottom two squares here, he had an incredible observation. He said, there's nothing wrong with people in a me organization. He says, we have created them. This was a really enlightened person. He realized that the system took these people on the left when they hired in and made these people out of them. So the strategy becomes, how can we get people that are being used to this to move in this direction? So one of the things I would encourage you to do, and then share reflections next month or the month after, is pay attention to your pronouns. I would encourage each of you, you could start at home. If your spouse was to say something like, look at what your son did, you might say, you mean our son. So pay attention to your pronouns, your, our, my, mine, we, you. And so in a work setting, be very careful in emails, be very careful when you're communicating. Begin to shift your pronouns as appropriate from your language, from how did you do to how are we doing. Run that experiment very subtly and see how people respond to it. Another thing I've had colleagues do is, in fact, this could be a really neat experiment. that any of you could run tomorrow morning. Let's say, you know, where you work, again, for those of you that are not working from home, perhaps, let's say you take a piece of paper and you crumble it up to a ball and you put it in a hallway where it doesn't belong and see how long it sits there. It could be in a break room. You make a cup of coffee, drink half of it, and leave it on the table and see how long it sits there. And so these become everyday indicators of how the organization is focused. And so I used to tell Boeing executives, if you walk into the restroom, at least I know in the men's restroom, that's where I'd be. I say, count how many paper towels can't make it into the trash can. I said, what is that an indication of? Our lack of respect for janitorial services. So these little things become easy experiments, easy things for you to pay attention to. When people leave a conference room, do they put the chairs back in their place? Maybe when you leave a conference room tomorrow, you don't leave the conference room until you put the chairs back into position. So these are the types of things you can do as an individual. Don't make a big deal of it, but look to see if you could become the change that others pay attention to. So in a we organization, if I ask, will the report be done by tomorrow? What might the answer be?
An honest answer.
Yeah. No, but think about it. What would be a really easy answer in a we organization? You know, the easy answer in a me organization is yes. So what's the corresponding easy answer in a we organization? Will the report be done by tomorrow?
We have to check with our colleagues, or I don't know if it's cooperation or.
And who is that?
Wilfred.
Okay, so
sorry,
Wilfred.
I hate silences, so I answer.
Okay.
I answer.
All right, so Wilfred, I'm gonna propose an answer. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So Wilfred, will the report be done by tomorrow?
It depends on my colleagues.
No, okay, well, no, just stop there. I say, will it be done by tomorrow? You, instead of saying yes, say it depends, right?
Yeah.
Then I say on what?
The availability of our organization.
Right. What else?
Timeline ahead still.
Yeah. What time tomorrow? Do you want it you need it by noon, right?
Yeah.
What about all the other things you want me to do, right?
Yeah.
Is this a 1 hour task or a 5-minute task?
Yeah.
Right. This is the same thing as tell me about the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I find is if you start to think about it depends as an answer, but it's not a being smart alecky about it. It's tell me about the table. I can have it done by tomorrow, but it depends upon what done means. So in a we organization, it depends is an easy way to answer any question because there's always an opportunity to get a little bit more context. But in a me organization, if you answer it depends, that's not a good day. But so the idea is in this progression is the theory is that as we pay attention, this is a psychology piece of Dr. Deming's work. As we pay attention to this, then the organization will appear. as it makes sense. But it's not putting a gun to people's heads. It's them enjoying what they're doing what they think makes sense to improve how the organization operates. So who are the managers in a me organization and what do they do?
They only think about their own department.
You think about what now?
You only think about your own
You
department.
only think about your department? Okay,
Yeah.
what else?
Check the KPIs.
Yeah, it's all about that, right?
Mhm.
It's providing the KPIs, it's providing the rewards, the punishment, right? So who are the managers in a we organization and what do they do?
Facilitate.
Okay, they mentor, they coach. Okay, so let's go one further. Who are the leaders in a me organization and what do they do?
Sorry, the what in the me organization? Oh, leaders.
Who are the leaders in a me organization? Who are the leaders and what do they do?
The loudest ones. Who scream the hardest.
Okay, so how do we know who the leaders are in a me organization?
They constantly talk about their successes.
Yeah, but more than that. More than that. When somebody talks about the leadership team in a me organization, who are they talking about?
They think in problems, not in solutions.
Okay, what else?
What are they talking about?
They're talking about themselves.
Yeah, but more than that. More than that, what else about them allows you to figure out, oh, they must be the leadership team?
Blaming others, blaming circumstances about when something goes wrong.
Well, let me say this. What I've seen within organizations is there's the executives, and the executives are referred to as senior management, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or might they also be called the leadership team?
Yeah.
So if the senior managers are the leadership team, what does that say about the leaders and the managers?
They're the same.
Yes, exactly. So if in a me organization, the leaders are the managers, what's the message to people who aren't managers?
There are no leaders.
You're not a leader, right?
Mhm.
Which gives you permission to do what?
Nothing.
Anything you like.
Just sit and wait for direction.
Yeah.
Tell me what to do. I need a process. I don't have a process. So what's behind this, and this is what I began to realize within Boeing, is holy cow. If you want to be invited to Boeing's leadership center, guess what? You have to be a manager. And I thought, wow. So that means all the people that don't go to the leadership center are being told you're not a leader. And all the people that are managers are being told you are a leader. Can you appreciate how that impacts an organization?
Yeah.
So the managers are automatically the leaders. And the non-managers are automatically not leaders. So what you have is, in a me organization, leadership is exclusive.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, hold on. Went the wrong way. But let me say this. If leadership is the ability to create a path for others to follow, bringing forth a new order of things, who are the leaders in a we organization?
Anybody?
Yes.
Everybody is. Yeah.
Everyone has that capacity to say, I have an idea. I have an idea on how to write software differently. I have an idea on how to improve welding. So in a we organization, leadership is inclusive. And so part of what keeps a me organization is telling everyone, if you're not a manager, you're not a leader, wait for direction. And so the reason we bring this up at the close is our vision, our ambition in this entire Quality Circle program is that you feel like a leader. And you feel like the ideas we're sharing with you provide you the ability to bring forth a new order. You have to be careful with that. But in that environment, everyone has the ability to have ideas and possibilities. Now the challenge becomes, we cannot use all those ideas. Now we have to, sort through them. So in a me organization, it's easy. I'm the boss. I'm the only one with ideas. I can dictate. In a we organization, part of the challenge is, what do you do with all these ideas? That's a we organization challenge. So in a me organization, it's easy. Just do as I say. In a we organization, it's like, being married. We got a lot of ideas about what to do this weekend. It's no longer my choice. And I'd also say that you've all met Monica, and my favorite answer to questions is, it depends. But if she asks me if I have plans for Saturday morning, you know what my answer is?
Yes.
No. What did you have in mind? So there's times when I realize that it depends is not the right answer. So be careful with that. So, all right. So thank you for that time. Let me turn it over to Frans.
Thank you, Bill.
Good.
Right, so given this, the program this afternoon, do we have questions that we can probably answer, or questions that need more preparation so we can talk about it next time? Do we have comments like eureka moments that we want to share? And observations. So along those lines, fire away.
So, yeah, the challenges for the we organization, Bill already said it, is what to do with all the ideas.
Well, in fact, it's a luxury problem, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And how to go about that. So what you need to do is to examine those ideas, filter them, prioritize, and which ideas can help our organization best forward.
Yeah.
And do that with a team. And then the best way to go about it is to select a team that is a cross-section of your organization.
Yeah.
Right? So senior management is involved, but also the janitor. Or maybe people from the restaurant,
Yeah, what I see in my organization or our organization. At that point of examining, filtering, prioritizing the ideas, then the me organization pops up, because then it becomes the management team or the leadership team who prioritize, who will. So that's what I see happening in shifting between the we and me organizations.
Because there's a manager also present, people are not, maybe a little bit scared to ventilate their
Exactly.
ideas.
Exactly.
So it can be very inhibiting when manager is present.
Yeah.
But then
Well, the challenge in a me organization is, when you ask me, if you've never asked me for ideas, if I give you an idea in front of my boss, that my boss may feel bad about that, right? Because my boss's boss may look at that and say, you haven't done this yet. I mean, so you got to be careful there. But the other thing I want to point out is, and I've seen this, is the workers have to be mature enough on how to handle this responsibility. Because workers in a me organization, their attitude is, I gave you 2 ideas already you didn't do anything with. I'll give you 1 more, and then you'll never hear anything from me again. And then you have to have incentives. And so the maturity thing is, there has to be an appreciation that we can't use every idea. We want to hear ideas because ideas lead to other ideas. But the maturity is, you can't do everything you have planned for the weekend. And because also something will come up and something has to wait till next week. We have to have the same maturity at work. In lacking that maturity, you won't get ideas.
And you have to give them feedback why this idea was not chosen on this occasion.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And we'll look, and in January, we'll give you some other ideas on how to manage that. But in a we organization, managing the ideas is a really big deal.
Maybe we can touch on the baby steps. Peter Paul mentioned, what baby steps can we take, moving from me to we. And have any of you ideas about that? How to do that? Start small, and then.
Well, start with yourself.
Yeah.
Talk in the we language.
Yes. Be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
Be the light.
Change. Be the change.
Well, like you just showed, start at the bottom side. Start with the people, and then.
Yeah. Well, in preparation for today, I came across a good example the other day with our grandchild. I'll show you. We bought him this tractor, right?
Yeah.
And this is a US tractor, a John Deere, and what comes with it is a
Tool.
A tool, right? Now, our 2-year-old, he saw this, and of course, it's cool. It goes backwards and forwards, and then we showed him that you can actually use this tool to loosen the nuts, right? And it works. You take it off, and the bonnet comes off, and then you see the engine, and you can take everything off, including the wheels. And so taking off the wheels, nope. You can actually take off the wheels. So what we did is we, together with he's a 2-year-old, on the floor, we have a yoga mat, so he can lie on the floor and play with it.
Yeah.
And then you show him how to take the wheels off. And then at first, he grabs the gun, and then he holds it like so. Doesn't work. So you help him by, putting your finger on top and say, okay, this way. And then afterwards, three or four times things go wrong, but after a few minutes, he gets the picture, right? And then you take off all four wheels, put them back on. And then this week or last weekend, there was the Formula One, right? And then we watched it, and he also watched Max Verstappen come in, and then the four wheels were taken off in 2 seconds, and new wheels on. So immediately he started to copy that.
Yeah.
And but the idea is to start on the lowest level possible, work together, show what the possibilities are, and then let the child do it himself. And now he plays with it every time, and he takes it apart. He knows how to reverse it and how to forward it and so on. And he has a jolly good time. The message being working together, start easy, and then build from there.
Maybe we should use those and the organization now.
Well,
For my organization.
There's a truck company, Scania in Zwolle,
Okay.
right? And they produce big trucks, and all of the hardware comes from Sweden, like the powertrain, which is the engine and the gearbox, and they assemble the trucks there, and then it's sprayed in a color that the customer wants. And they have what they have is a variant of the Toyota production system. They call it the Scania production system. Essentially, it's the same thing. But what happens is that when they hire new staff, regardless of the position, they go into an assembly room like here, with where they have to build a skelter from parts. So on the wall there's all sorts of parts, bolts and
Been there.
washer and whatever, and they have a drawing and they have to put it together. So there's all sorts of things they have to assemble, a frame, and then the moving mechanism, the chain, and so on, the wheels, and they have to do it in a group. And by doing that, they understand that first of all you have to have a process, and then how you follow the process by taking the parts step by step and verify each step of the process to come to an end product. And for even financial people have to do that. So and which is very, very powerful, because they are forced to look at the nitty-gritty stuff of how to put a skeleton together and learn what the difficulties are on the work floor. And by doing that, they have a very effective organization, which is efficient at the same time. So.
Also for temporary workers, there's first a training before they go into the factory for 3 or 4 weeks, I think, or so.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Also built a skelter also.
Yeah.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
But they invest in training before they go on the shop floor. So.
Okay. Yeah. Another example is Disneyland, where they, even temporary staff, they get a 3-week training before they're allowed to walk in the park and give directions to people. And if you meet an employee and you have a question, almost all the time they have the right answer. And in the rare cases that they do not have the right answer, they have a company tablet and they can tap in and say, okay, this is where you go. So talking about customer satisfaction, this is brilliant. Yeah. Other stuff that we want to cover before we wrap up? Nope.
Enough to let's sink in.
Yeah. So I made notes, and then we'll process the notes together with the notes from Sjoerd and Elisa, and then we compile that into a document that will be published. And of course, at the beginning, I made a note about human motivation, and we'll get back to that next time.
Yes, and also
Okay.
feel free to use journals to contemplate on exactly these three things. So see if there are any great ahas that you collected from this, what you might want to do with it. And if any questions arise from that, because you will receive another email somewhere along the coming weeks where we invite you to share those thoughts with us, because we can keep using that for your program. Our
Okay.
program. And maybe now that I'm talking, while we're on the subject, we designed the quality circle to be a mixture of lectures with Bill and Frans and application sessions with Sjoerd and myself. So in the applications, we are going to make things practical. So today there was a lot of talk about maturity of the organization, right? Which is a hard subject to touch on, like how mature are we on a scale from 1 to 10? How can you do something with that? And as Bill mentioned very, very early in the session, as an answer to your question, Saskia, is that the organization may not be ready for you to take those steps. So how do you know where the organization is, and how do you know when, what steps to take? So the next time in December, we're going to guide you through a maturity measurement. So it's something you can really use, and it's not one measurement and that's it, but it's something that will give you an indicator and that may help you in deciding which steps fit at this point.
Yeah.
So just to give you a little taste of what's coming up.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, for us, no preparation is needed. But all documentation will be like, you should have received an email with access to the Patagonia opleidingen portal.
Yep.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So documentation for the preparation is already there, and we will share some new stuff after this session as well. So keep an eye on it. And let us know if you have any questions or need any clarifications, because it's very easy for us to add stuff on there.
Right.
Bill, back to you, I think. Or
Oh, no,
Frans,
back.
either one.
No, nothing here other than what a pleasure it is to be with you at a distance. And,
Likewise.
Same from our side.
Yeah. It's well appreciated. So great. So with that, I think we can wrap up today's session. And looking very much forward to the next session in December.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Any of you would like to have a drink with us? You're welcome to.
Okay.
Ready to
Thank you
leave.
guys, cheers.
Bye.